Hey guys, and welcome to the class guide for Black Desert Online. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the various classes of BDO and talking about their strengths and weaknesses while showing you what the classes themselves can do. Now, before we start, it's important to note that Black Desert does not use the Holy Trinity. That means that there's no tanks or healers. There are only different variations on the basic DPS role. That's not to say that there aren't classes that are tanky or classes that can heal. The Witch and the Wizard are the closest to a healer or support, and the Valkyrie, followed up by the Striker, Warrior, and Berserker, are the closest to a tank, but there's no traditional tank or healer like you'd expect from a traditional MMO such as World of Warcraft. Instead, all the classes are just DPS classes that can also perform other utility roles. Now, due to the constantly shifting nature of balance in MMOs, and especially recently in BDO, I won't be assigning absolute ranks to classes based on their current power levels. Instead, I'll be ranking them based on their core class mechanics and skills. The three areas I will be ranking each class upon are PvP, and in PvP I'll kind of sort it into large and small scale if there's a large difference in how they perform in node wars versus 1v1 duels, PvE grinding speed, and the difficulty in playing that class based on just simply picking up the class and being able to play it well versus having to put time into mastering animation cancels and various little tips or tricks that the class has that are needed to bring out its full power. The first class is the Wizard. The Wizard is one of two primary spellcasting classes in Black Desert. Using a staff, he rains magic down upon his opponents from afar, casting iconic spells such as Magic Missile, Fireball, Meteor, Earthquake, and Blizzard. The Wizard is lethal against large groups of opponents, as the majority of his spells have huge AoE capabilities. The Wizard's primary method of defense, when in his pre-awakened form, is the long range that his spells have. Once he awakens, the Wizard chooses Fire and Water as his two main spellcasting elements. He also becomes much more of a risk taker, entering much closer into melee range in order to cast his spells. To make up for this, though, his spells all gain various defensive properties, and the power and scope of his spells massively increase compared to the majority of his pre-awakened spells. The Wizard is a node war god. He is one of the absolute top-tier combatants in large-scale PvP. He is quite a bit worse in 1v1s, however, he's not as useless as a lot of people make him out to be, and he is much better than the Witch is at 1v1s. When it comes to difficulty, I would rate Wizard as one of the least difficult classes. He is very easy to simply pick up and do well with. Most of his spells do not require proper comboing. You can simply chain from spell to spell, and all guilds and groups will want you to join them as a Wizard because both your grinding and your large-scale PvP are top tier. The Witch is the Wizard's female counterpart. The second of the two spellcasting classes in BDO, the Witch has pretty much an identical skill set to the Wizard in her pre-awakened form. Once again, she uses a staff and all the same iconic spells. Once she awakens, however, the Witch specializes in lightning and earth magic. Unlike the Wizard, the Witch is more defensive in nature. Not as close to the fight, she stands further back, has a guard instead of a grab, and she uses a lot more AoE, but has a lot less burst. The Witch is a lot worse at 1v1s than the Wizard is. The Wizard has a grab, which allows him to break classes that are trying to block or play defensively until the Witch messes up, and they can charge her while she's sort of standing around casting spells. So the Witch's 1v1 capabilities are probably the worst in the game, and that's why she has a 1-star for PvP in 1v1. However, similar to the Wizard, the Witch has all the tools needed to be a large-scale goddess. She has incredible AoEs, she has huge spells, she has utility spells such as Healing Lighthouse and Protected Area, and any guild will be happy to have more witches. So, the Witch, she gets a 5 for large-scale PvP, a 1 for 1v1 PvP, a 4 for grinding, as similar to the Wizard, she's a very amazing grinder, huge AoEs, and decent between pack mobility, but not quite at the very, very top. And only a 1 for difficulty, as the Witch is very easy to just pick up and play. Next up, we have the Ranger. So the Ranger is Black Desert's sort of standard bow-using class. She uses a bow to attack from afar, and if enemies get close, she uses her dagger as well as some very nimble acrobatics to hit them a couple times and then retreat to the safety of her optimal range where she can start using the bow again. She's a very nimble, very agile class, but once she awakens, the Ranger is a little special in that her awakening takes her from a long-range caster, similar to the Witch or the Wizard, only using a bow instead of spells, and makes her a pure melee fighter, using the Kama Sylvan Spirit Sword and summoning wind elementals to help her in combat. While the sword is a very cool looking weapon, it's very high skill cap, very intensive, no defensive maneuvers apart from quick dodges and evades, and very high damage. A lot of players are very unhappy with having to switch to the sword once they awaken. Luckily, absolute skills allow the Ranger to remain in bow form if you want to after you start unlocking a few of them, but do note that you will need to use your sword if you want to unlock the full potential of the Ranger. For PvP, the Ranger gets a 3, but I tend to err a bit on the higher side of a 3 for large scale. Her absolute skills make her pretty good at just raining down damage on enemies without getting hit, and then the sword allows her to peel enemies off of her backline, such as witches or wizards, and duel them very powerfully in 1v1. I would actually rate her even higher in 1v1 with 4 stars for 1v1. For PvE, the Ranger also gets 3 stars, because the Ranger's PvE doesn't really stand out as special, but it also doesn't stand out as bad. It's very quick in between pack mobility, decent amounts of AoE, but nothing insane like the Witch Wizard or Musa have. And while she has a lot of speed, the Ranger does need a decent amount of AP to get going with her good grinding speeds. For difficulty, the Ranger gets a 2, but I would put in brackets a 4. She's very easy to pick up and play, especially in her pre-awakened form. The Ranger's bow form, very easy to use, very powerful, and it's a lot of fun. The Ranger's sword form is also powerful and a lot of fun, but takes a lot more finesse, and properly weaving between both the pre-awakened and awakened forms is very important if you want to pull out the max potential of the Ranger. So, she's easy to pick up and play, but there's also a lot of potential for growth if you want to put in the time to learn your class. Following up, we have another female-only class, and that is the Sorceress. The Sorceress is a spellcaster, but unlike the Witch and Wizard, she is a melee spellcaster. The Sorceress likes to get up close and personal using her darkness magic, and fight enemies right up in their face. She is very high skill cap, very evasive. She plays a lot like a fighting character. Even though Black Desert's an ARPG, a lot of the characters play more similar to Dynasty Warriors, if I had to give an example, whereas Sorceress plays more like a fighting character, kind of similar to Striker. She has a lot of combos, a lot of cool ways to weave her skills together, and the difference between a good Sorceress and a bad Sorceress is very apparent. Once she awakens, the Sorceress stays in melee range, but she gets a really cool scythe. The scythe allows her to do a lot of cool tricks. She gets invisibilities, she has dashes, she has teleports. She is pretty much the Omae wa mo shindairu type character of Black Desert, which you'd think be the ninja, but it's really the Sorceress. In large scale, I'd give Sorceress a 3.5. She's very powerful if you can get her ultimate off, which was recently nerfed, you can't get off as much anymore, but her 100% Black Hole is one of those powerful ultimates in the game. She's also pretty good at peeling for her carries. She is a great flanker, and her AoE damage is nothing to sneeze at. But she is pretty fragile, so you do have to be careful kind of skirting around the fight. In PvE, she also gets a 3, as similar to the Ranger. She's got good AoE, good between pack mobility. She's strong at grinding, but she doesn't really excel compared to other classes. And she's also not bottom of the pack. She's just a solid grinder. I would give the Sorceress a full 5 stars for difficulty, as the difference between a good Sorceress and a bad Sorceress is huge. A bad Sorceress can still kind of cheese out wins using stuff such as the invisibilities and teleports against bad opponents, but against a good opponent, a Sorceress will be mercilessly exploited and killed. A good Sorceress, though, can use all the tools in the kit to really make other players' lives hell. It's kind of similar to a ninja that likes to play around with stealth. A good Sorceress is going to be teleporting everywhere, they never stop moving. If you mess up, they can almost one-combo you because Sorceress has very good damage. It's extremely scary to fight, and she is a very high skill cap character with a lot of animation cancels that you need to learn if you want to pull out the class's full potential. Coming up next, we have the Valkyrie. So the Valkyrie is the paladin of Black Desert Online. The Valkyrie uses holy magic as well as a sword and shield to stand on the front line and basically be a tank. She has very good damage, and a lot of people are kind of surprised by this because the Valkyrie looks like the archetypical tank in BDO. She uses a massive shield, she has a sword, she has healing magic, and when she awakens, she replaces the sword with a giant lance, but her damage is surprisingly high, especially in bursts. However, the Valkyrie's true strength is in her tankiness. She has amazing staying power, a great block, she has a sort of mini protected area, kind of like witches and wizards. She has heals, she has everything she needs to stay on the battlefield for a long time. The Valkyrie, she is pretty powerful in large scale. Similar to the witch and wizard, she has a lot of utility. So no matter what, a guild's not really going to be unhappy if more Valkyries apply to join them. She's not as good as the witch and wizard in large scale as a melee class, which means her gear score requirements are a bit higher so that she can survive, but she is still very good. In small scale, she's fairly similar to large scale. Good Valkyries are very powerful. She has all the tools she needs to fight properly. She doesn't necessarily have any sort of things that allow her to easily get wins. She has stuff such as her vacuum, but she doesn't have anything like the Sorceress teleports, the ninjas, huge grabs and block jumps, or other specialized 1v1 classes that allow her to cheese out wins from just about anyone. She's a much more straightforward class. For difficulty, I would give the Valkyrie a 2, as she's a very straightforward class. For PvE, I'd give her a 3.5, as her AoE is actually surprisingly good, her mobility is pretty high, and she has a vacuum that allows her to easily suck in mobs around her and murder them all in one shot before moving on to the next pack. Next up, we have the Warrior. The Warrior is the Valkyrie's male counterpart, but I would say that Warrior and Valkyrie, of all the paired male and female classes that share the same pre-awakened weapon set, Warrior and Valkyrie are the least alike. Where the Valkyrie uses the sword and shield as well as holy magic and is much more defensive and oriented in nature, the Warrior doesn't use magic at all. He is very straightforward. He is a physical melee fighter, using his sword and shield to get in there, disrupt his opponents, and slash them down with pure swordsmanship and skill. And when he awakens, he goes for a much more offensively oriented awakening by obtaining a great sword. In PvP, the Warrior is very strong. Similar to Valk, he has very good staying power on the battlefield. He's a lot more defensive than certain other classes due to how DP works and how he gets a nice huge guard. He's not as amazing defensively as the Valkyrie is, but he's still very good, and his offensive options are higher than the Valk's. He is able to one-shot entire groups of players if he can get off certain skills or certain combos. So for PvP, the Warrior gets a 4, and for PvE, I'd also give him a 4, as his mobility is surprisingly high. I kind of like him to the Sorceress. He is good at getting between pack to pack, killing them in one big AoE, and moving to the next pack. I would say he's a little better than the Sorceress at this, but other people would say the Sorceress should be rated higher in PvE, and that is certainly a viable criticism. For myself, I see Warriors as being slightly stronger grinders until very high levels of AP, and so I'm rating him as a 4-star rather than a 3. For difficulty, I'm going to give the Warrior 3 stars. He's actually a bit harder than the Valkyrie, as there's a lot of important animation cancels you can learn on the Warrior, which increases skill cap quite a bit. Now, unlike the Sorceress, the animation cancels for the Warrior are not as important to mastering the class and bringing out every last bit of power, but they are still fairly important, and learning them will put you at a rather significant advantage compared to warriors that have not learned how to properly use their kit. So I'll give him 3 stars for difficulty. He's not super hard, he's fairly straightforward, but there are some intricacies to his kit that you should learn. Next up, we have the Tamer. So the Tamer is a sort of lolly beastmaster, but unlike normal beastmasters, she doesn't tame random monsters. Instead, she has this huge ink wolf called Heilang, who she summons to help her fight right on the front line with her short sword, and later once she awakens her bow staff, or to empower her attacks and allow her to hit even harder. The Tamer is a nightmare in 1v1s. I would put her in the top 3 1v1 classes in the game. She is incredible at dueling and a good Tamer. I'd honestly fight almost anything else, probably apart from a good Sorceress. She is really powerful 1v1s. Unfortunately, the Tamer is not as good in large-scale PvP. She did recently get some buffs, but the nature of the Tamer's kit means she has less AoE, and she's fairly unprotected. So the Tamer, very easy to just kind of get AoE down in the middle of the fight between guilds, and as a result, the Tamer is more of a flanker. But there are other classes that do the flanking job better, such as Sorceress, Musamewa, or Ninjas. So the Tamer, I'll give her a 5 for 1v1 PvP, but in large scale, she only gets a 2.5 to at most a 3. For difficulty, the Tamer gets a full 5 stars. She is one of the most difficult classes in the game. She has more animation cancels than Sorceress, although they are less important to the overall ability of the Tamer, as the Sorceress has some very key animation cancels that are important to getting off maximum damage in her combos, whereas the Tamer has a few more, but they're not as important to maximizing her damage potential. For PvE, the Tamer only gets 2 stars, as she's one of the worst grinders in the game, in my opinion. She has very small AoEs, her between pack mobility isn't as good as other classes, and she struggles quite a bit at grinding compared to other classes, at least early on. She is very good, however, at places such as Gaha's Bandits, which have lots of packs, but they're fairly spread out and the packs are very small. That's where Tamer kind of excels at grinding. Finally, for this first part, we have the Ninja. So, the Ninja is the first of the 2 Shinobi classes. He is the male ninja, and he uses a short sword and a shuriken. Both the ninja and the kunoichi can use the shuriken or the kunai, but each of them specializes in one of the 2. For the ninja, it's the shuriken. For the kunoichi, it's the kunai. Once he awakens, the ninja uses the Sura Katana. The Sura Katana is a set of 6 katanas that the ninja uses, very similar to Roronoa Zoro from One Piece, where he's always got a katana in hand. He uses each of them in a few different ways, and it's actually pretty impressive to watch. He transitions from a sort of shadowy assassin to almost more of an upright samurai that can still fall back on all those little shadowy assassin tricks he has to kill his opponents. In large-scale PvP, the ninja isn't amazing. He doesn't do too much in large-scale PvP because, similar to the Tamer, he has problems staying in the fight. He is very good at flanking, and I'd say he's much better at flanking than the Tamer is, but where the ninja shines is 1v1. The ninja is one of the other 3 top 1v1 classes in the game. I would say the 3 are Ninja, Tamer, and Sorceress, and his 1v1 abilities, especially recently, are amazing. The ninja has stealth, which allows him to get away easily. There's lots of little cheese tactics that ninjas can use to defeat their opponents, especially opponents that do not know how the ninja plays. And even in large-scale PvP, the ninja has some very hard-hitting moves. If he can set these moves up, the ninja will decimate opponents. So I'll give the ninja 5 stars for 1v1, and I'd give him 3.5 to 4 for large-scale. He's a very powerful fighter, but there are better classes for pure large-scale PvP, such as the Witch, Wizard, or Valkyrie. For PvE, the ninja gets 3 stars. He's got very good mobility, and recent changes have given his AoE a few boosts to allow him to one-shot most packs. For difficulty, the ninja gets 5 stars, just like the Tamer and the Sorceress. He is a very powerful class, but there's a lot that separates a good ninja from a ninja that just sort of spams block jump and uses stealth to try and cheese out victories. Now, the difference between a good ninja and a terrible ninja isn't going to be immediately obvious to most players, but to players that have sparred against ninjas a few times and understand their kit, the things that you can do against a bad ninja are much easier than against a good ninja who knows how to take advantage of his mobility, his stealth, and all the little tools that his kit has to offer. Anyways, guys, this is the end of part 1. Part 2 should be coming out in the next couple days, hopefully tomorrow. Hopefully this has been helpful to you so far. Comment below what you think, and yeah, hope to see you in part 2. Have a good one.